So as a reminder, well, let me turn it to you guys. Mohammed, why is console.log so useful for us? What does it do? Is your mic working? Are you muted?
Yeah, come again, please.
Oh yeah, console.log. Why is it so useful for us as developers?
Um, console.log. I understand it is what gives us the permission to log into the interface. I mean, what is going to show us the results of what we have done.
Yeah, the last part. So showing the results of what we've done. So really, the beauty is as the code is running, we can see the values of different variables. That's really the beauty, in my opinion. Values of different variables. Because you can look at your code and think you know what a value is going to be, but when there's like hundreds of lines of code, or probably not that many in one module, but 50 lines of code and a lot of variables and things are interacting with each other. Sometimes you're surprised. Sometimes a variable will be null. And you go, well, why is that null? And then you got to kind of work up the chain and see what's going on. So anyway, our first objective of the day, I want to welcome you guys, say hi, welcome to Loop's lecture. So how can I do that with console.log? All right, console.log, and I can say hi, welcome to Loop's lecture. And then when I press save, live server is automatically running this code, and we can see it right here in our console. So the thing is, hopefully I have 21 of you today, right? I love days when everyone's here. It's kind of rare, but it's always nice. Presumably we have 21. How can I need to say hi to all of you guys, right? For this objective. So how could I do that? Lin J, how could I say hi, welcome to Loop's lecture 21 times?
I don't know.
Without loops, how could
Still
I do it?
learning.
Semsi, how could I do it without loops?
You could just copy and paste
Yeah,
this console log
I could do this,
21
right?
times, but yeah, it's
Um,
not efficient.
yeah, and that's gross, right? To have to repeat ourselves. So the fundamental rule of coding in general, programming, dry. Anybody know what dry is?
Don't repeat yourself.
Yep. Do not repeat yourself. And we're definitely repeating ourselves, right? So
Yep.
how can I do the same thing, but using a for loop?
Me again?
Sure. Go for it.
Okay. So let's use the keyword for, and then we're gonna start with declaring a variable. It's gonna be the starting part. So for let I equals 0, and then semicolon. And now here is the condition part.
Very nice.
We could say I is less than 21. And then semicolon, and we can use the increment I++. And then basically, yeah, curly braces
Yeah.
and console log I.
Yeah. So now we're going to see that 21 times. Chrome doesn't like to repeat themselves either, I guess. So they just show the number 21. So this is a for loop. It will repeat a block of code a number of times. And just like Semsi kind of beautifully said, it's made up of those 3 parts. So part 1, initializer. Part 2, the conditional. Part 3, increment. And it has a very specific sequence of what gets hit when. So of this block, lines 7 through 9, what is the first part that's read? So when this code, when JavaScript engine V8, the powerful, beautiful engine in Chrome, right, is seeing this code and running it, what gets run first out of all these pieces? Sadiq?
The initialization part.
Yeah. So this gets run first, but it's a little unusual because after it gets run once, unlike the other parts here, it doesn't get run ever again. Okay? So just one time, but it is first. So it's declaring a variable, which is weird, right? Because we could just declare a variable here, but I guess when they invented for loops, this was nice because it kept the variable in the scope here. And when I say scope, I mean this variable of I is only accessible within the curly braces. And this is not a scope lecture, but scope is important enough that I should address it very superficially, even now. So when I say scope, it's where variables can be accessed. So the scope of this I variable, I'm saying, is within these curly braces. So if I try to console.log I here, what's your guess, Elri?
It will. It's outside of the scope, so
yeah.
I don't think it will be undefined, I think.
Yeah, either undefined or an error. We'll see. Right? So we get a reference error. I is not defined. Yep. So this is the first part that gets read. So we're declaring a local variable here. What's the second part that gets read? Ritu?
The condition is read next.
Yeah. So we have a conditional. We've seen this yesterday, right? So I is less than 21 is an expression that's going to evaluate to what, Ritu?
True.
To true. So the I right now is equal to 0. Is 0 less than 21? So this becomes true. Okay. Now things are a little weird, a little unexpected. So we had the first part here, the second part here. Now which piece runs? Now which piece runs? Any guess, Maureen?
The increment.
Which one?
The increment, the I plus.
No, that's the weird part. So if we console.log I here, we start off this, I equals 0, and then we say is 0 less than 21, that's true, and then the block of code is run. So we'll actually see the 0. We'll actually see the 0 here. And then we'll see the message, welcome to loops. But then after this block is read, where does it go now? So after here, after this line of code on the first iteration, where does it go back to? Because it has to repeat, but where does it go? Calypso?
It goes to the incrementer so it can add one and then repeat the loop. until it
Yeah,
reaches 21.
yeah. So this is weird. It goes back to here when it's done over here, and I is equal to I plus 1. So 0 plus 1 is 1. So I is 1. And then it goes to the conditional and says is 1 less than 21. And that evaluates to what, Kimberly? Is 1 less than 21?
Yeah.
True. So where does it go after it says true?
It goes to the next one.
The next
Increment.
one, what?
The I plus plus.
No. After it's true, it goes to the code block. Yeah. It's pretty. These for loops are kind of complex. They look simple, but it's kind of strange, right? The syntax is not intuitive if you really break it down. But that is the flow. So first here, and then never again, and then the conditional, code block. When it's done, it's incremented, back to the conditional, back to the code block, back to the incrementer, back to the conditional, back to the code block. Until what? How does this for loop know when to stop? Farhan?
So it stops once the conditional is reached as false, or in other words, once I is greater than 21 or equal to 21.
Yeah. Well, in this case, 21. Because this will evaluate to false, this expression, and then it'll stop. Last cohort, which I thought was hysterical because I've never seen it before, and a student did it. A student somehow converted a for loop to be an infinite while loop. I think they just did true here. I'm not going to save it because it'll cause an infinite loop. I just thought it was so funny because, I don't know. I just never had seen that before. Questions on the overview of the basic for loop?
For the increment, are we limited to I++?
No,
I++
certainly not.
just means like adding by 1, or?
Yeah. I++ means I equals I plus 1. And the only time in this course I ever want you guys to write I++ is in a for loop. I don't like the syntax. When you want to do that logic of adding 1 to a variable that already exists, you're going to use I equals I plus 1. But only in a for loop would I like you to use this other syntax that's equivalent.
Do you not like the plus equal instead of doing the equals I plus 1?
No, I like plus equal. That's fine too. Yep. Just a little more advanced, but that's fine. Okay, so objective 1 done. We said hi, welcome to loops 21 times. Objective 2, countdown. So after the boot camp, you got your first job at NASA, right? And they want you to build a countdown for a launch that starts at 10 and counts down to 0 in the console. How can I get started doing this, Ketzerin?
You're gonna be start with the for loop too.
Yeah, so we'll make a basic for loop.
And then let I equals 0. Semicolon. I less more than 10. Is it I less more than 10 or I greater?
Let's go with it, and then we'll see it, and then we'll tweak it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I minus.
Oh, mine. Ooh, okay, but I'm not going to press save because this might be a problem. So why would it be a problem if I press saved here, Ketzerin?
Because it's gonna be.
So let's break down the pieces. Where do we start in the for loop?
For I equals 0.
So I is equal to
Let's-
0. Then where do we go?
And then we go to I greater more than 10.
Well, you said less than 10. Do you want greater than 10 now? Or let's stick with it here. So is 0 less than 10?
Yes.
Yeah, true. So then where do we go after that?
And then we're gonna be like,
yeah.
oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No worries. ZO2, where do we go after the conditional? So we have
And then
true.
you're gonna go to the if you want to like show the code console log.
Yeah, we can console log here. That's fine. I'm still not gonna press save though, so we can't see it because I don't want to break my, or not break my computer, but cause problems. So
because
0.
you want to count down, so it means they have to start from 10 and 9 and 8.
Yeah, but right, that's exactly right. But let's just finish the learning, go through it just for learning purposes. So is 0 less than 10? You said true, and then where does it go next?
And then go to the block.
Yeah, it goes to the code block and console.log 0. And where does it go after that ZO2?
And then go
Oh,
to
Ketzerin, thank you, but let's
I'm sorry.
check in. Yeah, ZO2. Where does it go after that?
Then it goes to what we have as I minus minus.
Beautiful, the incrementer. So 0 becomes what? Or I becomes from 0 to what? So I equals 0 minus 1. What is I now?
Yeah. So it's going to be minus 1.
Yes, -1. Yep. And after that, where does it go back to?
Oh, gosh.
Here, here, or here? Those are the options.
I less than 10.
Exactly, the conditional. So is -1 less than 10?
Yes.
True. So where does it go now?
Then it goes back to the code block.
Yes. And it console.logs what value?
-1.
Yeah. And then where does it go?
And then it goes back to the, I can't remember, incremental.
Yeah.
I remembered one.
And I goes from -1 to what value?
Then it's going to go to -2.
And is -2 less than 10?
Yes.
So what's the problem here? Is it ever going to be false, this conditional? No. So we have an infinite loop, right? So now let's go back to Ketzerin, and do you have any suggestions? So our goal is to see 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Or, for fun, let's say, instead of 0, let's say launch. That'll be fun, right? So any ideas there, Ketzerin?
So you're gonna have to do I plus instead I minus.
So if we do plus plus, what will we see in the console.log?
Going to see 10, 9, 8.
What's the first value?
I'm gonna see like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, which is great. We don't have an infinite loop anymore. And we are counting, but it's not a countdown, it's a count up, which isn't what we said in our specs.
So it means we're gonna have to still do I minus.
Yeah, so we're gonna do I minus, correct?
Yes.
And instead of starting at 0, what might we want to start at? Let's check in. Vanessa, what do you think? How can we fix this? Instead of starting at 0, what value should we start at?
You can start at 10.
Yeah. And maybe instead of I is less than 10, when do we want this to stop, basically?
Still me?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I zoned out
No,
a bit.
we wanted to stop at 9 for launch. No, we wanted to stop at 0.
Yeah, correct. So so what should I put for a conditional here? If we wanted to stop at 0.
I greater than 0.
Yep. Yeah. And let's see what that looks like in our console.log, right? So we have 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Which is good, right? It's what I said I wanted, but then I added that it'd be fun to say launch at the very end. So how can we actually get it to say launch here after 1? This is fun because it'll combine stuff from yesterday.
You can add a
if statements.
Yeah, if.
We can do an if statement. Do you still want it to be greater than 0, or do you want to do greater than or equal to 0?
I was thinking about that, but we can get away, I think, with having it still greater than 0. Yeah.
Okay. So then what we do is if I is greater than or equal to 2.
Well, we can try it, but we might have to come back. What do you want to do if I is
greater than great? Yeah. If it's greater than or equal to 2.
Okay.
And then we do console.log I.
Console.log I?
And then, yeah.
Okay.
And
so do you want me to delete line 15?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
And then we do else if I is else if I is equal to 1. Then we do console.log I, and then after that console.log launch. Or maybe we can just do else. So yeah, it doesn't need an else if.
And there we go. We got it. 2, 1 launch. Exactly. I think we can clean this up though. I think we can way simplify this. But it's a good first draft. Yep. But let's refactor it. Who thinks they can? I think we can clean it up. I might be wrong, but I think we can clean it up a bit. Any ideas?
Remove the if statements completely.
Yeah, I think we can do that.
You can just console.log I. You don't need a if statement.
Yes, correct. And then, yeah.
Remove that if statement.
Well, no, we still need the if.
You can console.log after the for loop. I mean, you can console.log launch after the for loop, and it will still work.
Yeah, no, yes, we could do that. You're 100% right. Let me show what you're suggesting. That's smart. But this will work, I believe, as well. So this works, the simplified version, but we also could kind of cheat, kind of not. I don't know. We could just move this to after the for loop, which is a great idea. Yeah. That is kind of pleasingly simple. But for some reason, I feel like it's cheating a little bit, but I don't know why. Questions on countdown?
I do.
Yeah.
So I watched that video from Bro Code for pretty much the exact same thing, but he uses right after the I minus, but he has it as I minus equal sign. Can you explain the difference between that of why you're using negative, a minus sign and he uses an equal sign?
Yeah, so they're equivalent. This is going to be newer syntax. I want to say introduced in ES6, but it's just it's going to be totally equivalent. I'm surprised he used it. It's pretty rare to see this syntax, I feel like, in loops. This is really going to be the standard you say, I minus minus or I plus plus. So that's interesting that he used it there. I would prefer you guys to do the very standard in your for loops of I minus minus, but outside of any for loops, I do want you to use I equals I minus 1 or I minus equals 1.
I think he did it that way because he was also showing how you could decrement by like 2 or 3 instead, like by different numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. In that case, then you would want to do, you would want to spell it out like that, or the fancier way, like that. This syntax I feel like is a little confusing though for where you guys are right now. Yeah, I don't know. It might be more intuitive to you, but I would honestly just use this syntax, kind of spelling it out in the most standard way. Except in for loops where if you're incrementing or decrementing by just 1, use this syntax.
This is a super basic question, but is the variable always I, or is it just a placeholder like X or?
That's a great question.
Y?
So it can be technically anything, but so let me show that, but then, so it works just the same. The thing is, if you were on a technical interview and somebody used like X or Y, it would definitely cause my eyebrow to raise and be like, have they not written JavaScript in a while? I is just the standard unless you have a reason to not.
It's like best practice, kind of.
Yeah, because as developers, we like being used to things the way we're used to them, unless you have a reason not to. Yeah, so in a for loop, you really should just be using I to mean it's going to be short for index, right? Usually, even if it's not, though, you're still going to want to use I, unless, like I said, you have a reason not to. Last rounds of mock technicals, it was so interesting with the cohort. Everybody was using different variables like X and Y, and just that little bit of stress like caused everyone to just, I don't know, use like their algebra variables, I guess. I heard a question though as I was blabbing. Hey. Go ahead.
Can you use outside variables? Like let's say you had like I somewhere else.
You can technically, but it would be weird to do that.
Okay.
Yep.
And then would you just put I there instead? Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this would work, but I'm so unused to it.
I don't put the I in.
Oh, I have to make I10. Yeah. So it still works, but it's pretty gross. Go ahead, David.
I think they use I because it stands for iterator.
Oh, okay.
By convention.
Okay, iterator. Yep. I thought it was index, but I guess I'm wrong. Other questions, comments?
I have some question.
Yeah.
The code before when you use if, like if I equals 2, y is have to be equal to first, and then if else after that.
So before we had if I is equal to 1, right? To get the launch.
I think equal to, I think.
Well,
on the.
Oh, but that was a different solution.
Yeah.
That was the more complicated solution that we refactored. I don't remember why we used 2.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions on Countdown? Okay. Repeat characters. I almost forgot what I was talking about. So, for example, so let's have 2 variables one variable called character, and we'll do A. And let's say I want to repeat the character A, I don't know, let's go crazy, right? 100 times. And I want to add it to a string. So I want to add the character stored in the variable char, to the string. That's a little confusing, right? But if I console.log string, we'll actually see nothing in our console. But I want to see a 100 times when I console.log string. How can I do that using, well, how can I do that? Yeah. I'll open it to the class because it's kind of tricky. Any ideas?
Are we maybe a while loop?
A while loop. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about that, but probably you could. I mean, I think they're interchangeable technically. Anytime you can use a for loop, you can use a while and vice versa. So what did you have in mind?
So it would be like while, and then the parentheses, while some condition, what was it? While str dot length is equal to, would that be it?
I think we're going to hold off on that because that's going down some paths I don't want to go yet. So actually, let's just use a traditional for loop, and then maybe we'll think about if we could have done this with a while loop. Yeah, if that's okay. So using a for loop, any ideas?
For let I equals to 1, I less than or equal to 100, I less than or equal to 100.
Oh, sorry.
I plus plus.
Okay, very nice. So this will run 100 times, right? So very nice. And now what do we want to do in the for loop?
String is equal to str equal to str plus char.
Yes. And that might be it, right? There we go. 100. That doesn't look like 100 A's, but I'm sure it is. Yeah, so now we have 100 characters of A using a for loop that we stored in this string. So we didn't see this before, but what we just did is called string concatenation. Sorry. So what is string concatenation?
It basically adds strings together, like without spaces in between.
We can add strings together. What about the spaces?
There's no spaces.
Yeah,
in
no
between.
spaces.
I believe it
unless
just mushes them.
Unless we add one, yeah. So we basically, on this first iteration, what was string equal to on the very first iteration, Calypso?
It was nothing. It was just empty.
So empty string plus a string with A is equal to what?
A. Just A by itself.
Yeah, and then on the second iteration, what it was string equal to, Kimberly?
Can you say that again, Max?
On the second iteration, what is string equal to? So the first iteration, we had string is equal to empty string and character is equal to the string A. What is it equal to on the second iteration, the string?
We're going up two.
No, not numbers. No, just characters we're dealing with. The for loop, we're not actually using the numbers in the for loop. We're just using the iteration aspect of it. Let's go through the first iteration one more time quickly. So string right now is equal to an empty string. So we have an empty string plus char, which is the character A. So what is string equal to on the first iteration?
It's an empty string. And then it would be A.
Yeah, so it's just the character A. But then this runs again, this code block. And on the second iteration, string now is equal to what? Yeah, the character A plus char, which is the character A. So now we have two A's that can concatenated together. And then we do that 100 more times, right? And we have the 100 A's. So we have an example of using a for loop and string concatenation. Joining strings together.
What's the practical application of this? Like, what would be a real world?
Oh my God, manipulating strings we do in every program.
Okay.
So maybe you get a first name and a last name from a user separately from a form and you join them together. Okay. It is funny that once you start building real applications, you're going to be like, I can't believe I'm really actually using these fundamental pieces to build these complex applications. It feels so weird because I had the same exact experience as you. When I was first learning this, I was like, well, what does this have to do with like playing Baldur's Gate 3 or whatever? Like what is this? Like, but really this is the fundamentals for everything you build. Yeah. And you'll start experiencing that when you build real applications. Yeah, so I was working on a feature for Hackmyhead where there's a test, an aptitude test, and there was tons of strings I had to manipulate in different ways for that real production application. Yep. Great question. Okay. Let's move on, right? Counting vowels. So let's say I have somebody's name, right? And and I just want to count the vowels. And then, yeah. So I want to see the count in my console.log. What code can I write to manipulate that variable count to count the vowels in David's name? Victor, any ideas?
Run the question again real quick.
Yeah, so we have a name of David stored in a variable name. We have a count starting at 0. Some code we're going to write here. The hint is it's a for loop. And then when we console.log count, I want to see what number?
The number of vowels?
Yeah, so 2 in this case. Yep.
Yeah, I can't remember right now.
Let's start us off with a basic for loop. How can we write a basic for loop?
For let.
Well, I guess this includes the logic. So, yeah, and opens the class. Any ideas?
Would it be let I equal 0? And then do we use dot length in this case?
Yeah, we are going to use dot length. Yep.
So it would be I is less than name dot length.
And we'll talk about dot length in a second, so no one panic. But let's finish this off.
And then semicolon I plus plus.
Yeah, and let's console.log I. And Farhan, what am I going to see in my console for I?
So you're going to see the numbers 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 0 to 4.
Perfect. Where's that other? Console.log count. For right now, I'll just get rid of it. 0 through 4. So now we have to talk about this dot length, right? So data types have built in what we call properties and methods that we get for free from JavaScript. And a really useful property is called length, is included on all strings, and arrays actually, but we haven't talked about arrays. And it will give you the number of characters. So you can create any string and you can, without doing anything else, just access this property. So another cool thing, to see what you get for free on a variable, if you press dot, what do we see here? These are all what we call methods and a property. And we can pick which we find useful. So here we're going to use length. And now it'll show us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So we see the 6 there. So almost all data types, I think probably all, have built-in properties and methods that make it just very useful for us, the developers, to manipulate things. So name.length, in this case, with the name of David, is really just equal to 5. So it's as if we just wrote I is less than 5. And that's why we see in the console 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it iterated 5 times starting at 0. But now maybe my objective, instead of seeing the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, how can I see each character one at a time in David's name? So I want to see D, A, V, I, D.
You would do bracket notation I in the console.
Name bracket I think is what you said. But yeah, now we'll see D, A, V, I, D. So now this is the first time you're seeing bracket notation. We can use bracket notation on strings to access the character at a certain index. So in computer science in general, and certainly in JavaScript, we always start counting at 0. So the first index is index 0, actually, and that's where the D is in David. And then index 1 is the A, and so on. So if we console.log here, name bracket 2, what will I see in the console.log? Monica. Name at index 2. Which character is at index 2?
V.
Yes. So we see the V right here. Yeah. So that's bracket notation, which is, again, just built in. We get for free, and we can use for strings. And in this case, we're seeing each letter of David's name, which is great. But now let's return to our objective. We want to count the vowels. So our count is 0, but how can we use the logic we have written to increase our count when we encounter a vowel?
Use an if-else loop.
Sure. So what do I want to say for the if?
If, what is it? Name bracket I equals then a vowel. I would just do every vowel because I don't know how else to do it. So I do A.
That's what I was prepared we would do first, and then maybe come back to refactor. So
A and then or, and then you have to copy the whole thing and do it again. Name, or E, AE, and then do AEIOU.
AE, maybe I will copy this.
But you could just do A and I if you just want to see for this example. Since
Well, we might as well do it, right?
Okay.
How many of these do I need?
5, I think.
AE,
Yeah, you got it. You got one
I-
too many, I think.
O U delete U.
Would you do a Y for like oddball names like Sky?
Is
and
Y a
things like
vowel?
that?
Is Y a...
Yeah,
Sometimes.
it is. Like, yeah,
This is gonna
depending.
get controversial. Where's my error? I have an error somewhere. So or an E or yeah, it's telling me I have a, oh, I just haven't
I think it's because
completely.
you don't have the brackets.
Yeah, the curly braces. Yep.
Mm.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a bold stand and say Y for this right now is not a val because I don't want to write more. So console, I can console.log like encountered a val. Oh my god, what did I do?
VOWEL.
My mind just left my body. A
OWEL.
valve.
No.
What is wrong with me?
It's VOWEL.
Val. I was thinking of value, and I couldn't get that out of my mind. It's so embarrassing. A val. Jesus. Yeah, so it's saying encountered a val twice. But instead of console.logging that, what should we do?
Count plus plus.
Except I told you what I never want to see.
So
Don't want the
count,
consonants.
So count plus equal 1.
Yep. And then when we console.log count here, we did it. We got the 2. But now the beautiful thing is nothing's hard coded. So if I change this to be Izzy, oh, I screwed up, right? We have to use lowercase. I get the 1. So obviously this can be improved, but I'll leave that for you guys to think about.
Max, why is name crossed out and all those things?
I think it's a somewhat reserved word, or used to be. It's so annoying. Ignore that because, yeah, because you obviously can use the variable name as a name.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question to Google, though. VS Code is warning me about name. About variable named name. So supposedly somewhere there's a global that's being used called name, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think you can use name as the variable name. But we could, of course, change this to be student. Yeah. But I've used name everywhere in a million times in a million projects and been fine. But maybe I'll take a look after lecture, make sure.
How do you change all the variables at one time?
Yeah, so you highlight something just by clicking on it and then Control D as many times as you want to change them all at once. Yeah, good question.
Was the output from encountered a val a 2 count? Like before we added the count plus?
One more time?
Like, why do we have to add the count plus equals 1 after, because didn't the encountered a val give us the same output?
Oh, okay. So this is a good point. So console.log doesn't change anything. It just displays messages to us. This is what's actually changing the value of the variable count, which then we're displaying on line 54. But if we didn't have this, now what is count going to be?
still going to be 0?
Yeah. So we
Okay.
definitely need just saying encountered a val doesn't change anything. Especially not the
it
variable.
just tells us it did it. Okay.
Yeah. And now we don't need that. That was just for learning purposes. And I think there's some chat in Discord about this, but yeah, console.log is, I hate saying never in code, but it's never required. It's just a tool for us when we're developing. I mean, in production, I guess you do use it for errors, but it's never, as far as I know, those are never required ever. There's no situation where a console.log is required. It's just helping us, the developer. When we get to functions, though, the distinction between returning something from a function versus console.logging it will be a source of confusion, because it always is. But we'll hit that tomorrow. Questions on this? I think we'll do one more. Okay. So let's do virus generations. Let's skip. Yeah, because I think we can use a while loop. So what did I say for this? Let infected equals 1. So this is like patient 0 of an eventual pandemic. And let days, or day, I guess, equal 1. And then my question is, if the number of people infected doubles every day, how long to reach 1 million? So how many days to reach 1 million? Yeah, how many days to reach 1 million if the infected doubles every day? So at the end of this exercise, I want a console.log day and see like 30, 100, 10, however many days are required. See your expression. It's like, what the? Yeah, how many days are required to get 1 million people infected? It sounds evil. I didn't intend to make it sound evil, but yeah. How many days to reach a pandemic? And the hint is, one way to solve it is to use a while loop. This is pretty challenging though. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be much code at all.
Is it open for anyone, or are you
Open
gonna...
for anyone, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Farhan, if you want to go, you can go ahead and go. I just went.
No, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So you type while, and then a certain condition. In this case, while infected is less than or equal to 1 million.
You know, it's something cool. You're allowed to use underline, and it'll treat it as a number in JavaScript, which is pretty nice.
What does it count as, like the underline? Is it like a comma?
That's a good question. I mean, if we console.log this will still be. Let me comment this out because it'll be an infinite loop. But I think if we console.log this, it will still be like a number data type. I don't know how JavaScript is doing it behind the scenes.
Makes it easier to read. And
Yeah,
that's
just
the
for
only
readability.
purpose.
That's all that's going on. You absolutely don't have to use it if you don't want.
Okay. So while that condition is true, we can do infected times 2. Or infected multiplication. Yeah. I think that would be it.
Okay, so this is going to be an infinite loop, but now the question is why? So Calypso, why is this going to be an infinite loop as written right now? Although we're very close to the right answer.
You should put infected times equals 2.
Yeah. So infected equals
'Cause-
infected times 2.
So it updates infected, or else infected will always be 1 forever.
Very nice. So now let's console.log infected, actually, because that'll be fun to look at. So it's growing like exponentially, right? Well, if there's math nerds, don't correct me, or do correct me, but I guess this is exponential growth. I don't know. Doubling. So that's working, but our days are still 1, which I don't believe, because it looks like 15 about, or 20.
You have to add in the day counter as well. So day plus equals 1.
And yeah, there we go. So we have 21 days to reach what we're calling a pandemic of 1 million people, starting at 1 if it's doubled every day, the number of infected. So on that happy note, any questions on this one? I find I use while loops way less than for loops.
Do we handle do while loops?
No, I'm not going to show you them because I've personally never really used them. And there's a million more other useful loops I do want to show you, like for of and for in, which are useful, really useful. But do while works for sure. If you like it and want to use it, you can. Yep. Yeah. Okay, let me briefly go through the assignment today. Although what we covered here should put you in a really good place. So what do I want to do? Canvas. Week 2, loops opening up. So you're going to try to make a perfect clone, right? It's going to be the whole theme of this week. So the first prompt you get is saying, what program would you like to run? And then listing a bunch of options. And if we put in length, we can then put in a word and see the number of characters. And similar, we can do other applications or other functions. So if we choose yell and we put in a word, it'll uppercase it all. So that's going to be the kind of pattern we're doing today. And they're going to get more challenging as they go on. But you have to, please make just a perfect clone of this. So every word the same, all the functionality the same. So if I put in something the computer doesn't understand, I don't recognize that command. Advanced students, please don't use functions, objects, arrays. Yeah. I think some of you have cheated a little bit in the past. So let me explain my reasoning. I know the students who are very new feel very intimidated about people who have way more experience. So in an effort to minimize that, I don't want you just grabbing an object and, iterating through the keys. And it's just, if you're in a breakout room with somebody doing that, it just feels very overwhelming, right? So that's the rationale behind that.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
The binary, what is it supposed to do? Because when I put in a word, it doesn't, nothing pops up.
Yeah, binary is pretty weird. Basically, binary is just 0 and 1s, right? Or it's transistors that are represented by 0 and 1. So what your binary function has to do is take out everything that's not zeros and ones.
Oh.
Wait, let me try that
You gotta
again.
write binary first.
Did it break? Oh, binary. Yeah. There we go. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of silly, but it's basically filtering out what you don't want.